My name is Elizabeth. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really glad you're here. I read Come Closer by Sara Gran. Came out in 2003, but the paperback came out 2023. So it had a little bit of a resurgence of popularity. I'm not going to be able to give you a whole bunch of spoiler-free information. This is one of those books where I was like, oh, this is what this is about. You know, like a big chunk in. I was like, oh. And I was glad that on the little description on the back and on the internet and whatnot didn't say what this was really truly about. So I'm going to take a page from that description and tell you that this is about a woman. She's married. She lives in an apartment building that's sort of off the beaten path. Like, it's not in a really busy area of the city. And her husband and she start to hear a dripping sound, a clicking sound, a something repetitive sound, and it gets worse until it changes into something else, and yeah, that's about all I can give you, spoiler free, because what happens in this story is very cool. If you like spooky, scary, creepy stories, if you like horror stories, this is one you'll really enjoy. So if you would like to hear all about it, the whole story, then join me for the ride. Okay, so our main character's name is Amanda, and the story begins when she turns in a proposal. She's an architect. She turns in a proposal to her boss. And she puts a sticky note on it. Can't wait to hear what you think about this. You know, she feels great. He bellows for her to come into his office, and he's screaming her, "What the hell is this? How could you, you know?" She's like, "What are you talking? What?" So she looks at her proposal, and it's just insults and curses and just the most inappropriate things written about her boss. And she's flabbergasted. She's like, "This is not my proposal. I don't know what this is. I don't know where this came from. Let me get you the proposal." And she prints it out. And she looks at it and it looks right. And she hands it to him. And he's like, "Okay, this is right. Like, that was so, why would you do that?" And she's like, I wouldn't. You know, she's freaked out, but moves on. So this is where we start to learn more about her domestic life. She's married, and she and her husband happen to live in a place that is, like I said before, sort of a deserted part of the city. It used to be old, like, warehouses that were no longer needed to be used as warehouses, and then were converted into living spaces, into apartments and lofts and whatnot. So they're a little strange in that they have, like, very high ceilings, and they're sort of industrial like and open planned, and they're also in an area where a lot of people don't live. Like, they're in the warehouse area, so it's pretty quiet over there. And as I said in the beginning, a dripping sound starts. First, it's just every few nights, you know, they both hear it. When they go into the bathroom thinking it's in the bathroom, then it sounds like it's in the living room. And then when they go into the living room, it sounds like it's in the kitchen. And then we're in the kitchen, it sounds like it's in the bedroom. Like, no matter where they are, it's always just a little not quite where they are. And it's disconcerting, but at the same time, you know, they start rationalizing, oh, it must be a mouse in the walls. And Amanda starts to be impressed with this little mouse that made it up 4 flights of stairs and into their walls to eat whatever spiders might be in there. And it's very sweet the way that she rationalizes that it's totally safe. It's no big deal. He goes out of town, and her husband, whose name is Ed, doesn't hear anything. The entire time she's gone, there is not a single sound. When he goes out of town, It's every single night. So there's a stray dog in the neighborhood. I believe it's a German Shepherd, and he starts to approach Amanda when she first moves in, and it's the way she describes it is that he like loves her. He just like wants to be all over her and licking her and jumping on her. And so while she doesn't want a dog, she knows that this dog is gonna, be around. This is where it lives. So she starts to like, get treats for it or food for it. And she starts sort of training it so that it won't jump up on her so much anymore, and tells it to sit and, like a few basic things. It says that even her husband didn't notice the issues until after the dog did. This book is about demon possession. Yeah, demon possession. Not what I was expecting either. There's so many aspects of this that is so cool. So like if you are anything like me and you like spooky movies and spooky stories, then you've read quite a handful of, or seen quite a handful of possession movies. And I mean, The Exorcist is like the granddaddy of great, terrifying movies. And, there's great stories out there about possession. What's interesting about this is, first of all, the demons that do the possessing are usually male. And that's not the situation here. And also, the story is seen from the eyes of the person who is getting possessed, which is really fascinating because I feel like most stories are like, she started to act weird, so we tried this and we tried this, and she was still acting weird, and then she was acting weirder, and then we tried to do this, and then this happened. Exorcist isn't from Reagan's point of view. And this is literally from inside the person who is being possessed, which made it totally fascinating. So she says that everything really started Valentine's Day because her husband worked late and called her and said he was going to be late, and then was later than he even said he was going to be, and he walked in without wine, he walked in without flowers, and the tapping is especially loud that night. And he apologizes that it's Valentine's and he was late, and she just doesn't accept it. And in her mind is just going over in her mind just every single slight he's ever done in their entire marriage, which women do hang on to and remember and whatnot, but it's not healthy to go over them over and over in your head. And I think it's, a little bit of that stress that makes her start smoking again. So she's smoking cigarettes again, and she knows that Ed doesn't like it, but she happens to be sitting next to someone at a cafe outside, and they light a cigarette, and she's like, oh my God, that smells so good. And she just can't stop herself. And so one night, they're in bed and she's having a cigarette, and she leans over to put it out, snub it out into the ashtray, I guess, and fully thinking, I need to snub out this cigarette and put it into the ashtray. And instead, her hand puts it into her husband's leg and burns him just below the knee, I think. And both of them are just as shocked as each other. Like, neither of them is any more surprised by the situation than the other. So she's just as like, that, like, what's happening? This is so strange. And, and I think he rationalizes it away, and he's really, he understands that she's sorry, and she takes care of him. And, they're trying to make it work, but their once very, very happy marriage is clearly getting some cracks in it. And then some strange things, even more strange things start happening. Comes back from lunch one day, and her boss is like, have you been gone for lunch this entire time? It is after 3. You left before 1. What? Why were you gone for 2 hours? Like, you needed to, like, and she's shocked. What do you mean I've been gone for 2 hours? I've been gone for 2 hours. I went for an hour. She starts walking through what she did on her lunch break, and She thinks, okay, well, I seem to have lost some time. Maybe I fainted and I regained consciousness, but I don't remember regaining consciousness. I just sort of was walking again. And then I just headed back to work, not realizing what had happened. This is the rationalization that goes on in her mind. And she thinks, so strange, because I do remember she goes into a mom and pop kind of drugstore because she's looking for a very specific architectural magazine that she knows that they carry, that very few places carry. And she's looking through the different architectural magazines they have, and he starts yelling at her. The owner of the shop starts yelling at her, you buy the magazines and then you read them. You don't stand there reading them. You buy them and then you read them. And she's like, I'm just looking at everything to see which I'd want to purchase. And he's like, no, just bring me the ones that you want to read and I will pay them. You will pay me for them and you will read them. She's like, why is this strange little man being so rude to me? And like how obnoxious he was, and how she ended up only buying one magazine and then she walked out, and then that was when she must have fainted. A couple days later, she's watching the news and she sees a report about a man who looks very familiar to her who was killed in his store. Wait, that's the man that was yelling at her inside the store. That's so strange. It would be months later that she would think to herself, oh my God, I killed that man, didn't I? Great, because the author drops that on us, totally. It's like, it would only occur to me a few months later that I must have been the one who killed him. What? So the next sort of strange thing that happens is, so she goes out to dinner or goes out like a day to the beach with colleagues of her husband. So the couple, both of them work where her husband works. So all three of them are colleagues. So she ends up spending most of her time with their young daughter. And there are swans at this like pond that they go to. And she has a little conversation with the daughter and says, swans, they're really beautiful, but they can be really pretty dangerous. So, you want to make sure that you don't go over and, try to pet them or touch them. You want to give them their space. It's the safest thing. These are wild animals, that whole spiel that you tell a small child so that they won't go, poke a wild swan in the eye. So I'm watching the pond and she hears the little girl say, "Are you sure? But you're sure it's okay?" And like, it sounds like she's having a conversation with someone, but she can't. Amanda's not hearing the other side of the conversation. She's just hearing the child. And all of a sudden she just runs off and tries to pet one of the swans, only to get bit. And her and the mom both sort of like run over to the child at the same time and grab, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And the little girl starts screaming and says, "Why did you tell me it was okay to go over there?" And Amanda says, "What are you talking about? I specifically told you not to go over there." And the little girl yells at her, "Not you, your friend, the one that's always next to you." We really need to believe what children are saying they see. Especially in spooky stories. Really, the children somehow see stuff. In her evenings, Amanda finds that she's having these reoccurring dreams that take place on what she starts calling a crimson beach. So there's this red beach. There's this woman with extremely dark hair. She's very beautiful. Her teeth are sharpened to points. And she finds this woman rather mesmerizing, but she also feels very safe with her. And so she's just sort of like on this beach where these red waves are coming in and out. And one night she dreams that she's embracing her in such a way that it almost feels like they're becoming one. She says something like, how her spine becomes part of this woman's spine. And she finds herself flirting with men she would never flirt with. She describes that her ideal man is the guy that when you notice him noticing you, he looks away. Like, "Oh, I didn't mean to be caught seeing how cute you are," as opposed to the man that when you notice that he's leering, he leers more. In this day and age, we usually say that they have those men have sort of a rapey feel. Ick. So Amanda would lose time, and then she would wake up like on the edge of a bed naked. going like, what just happened? Who is this snoring mass next to me? I don't even understand what's happening. And she'll leave that space being very disgusted with herself and thinking, I have to make Ed his favorite dinner. I'm going to get like everything he needs. Only to, by the time she gets home, she hasn't gotten food. She hasn't gotten anything for either of them. And it had been decided that morning that it was her responsibility to take care of dinner that night. And she comes home with nothing, even though her plan was to make him his favorite meal. Instead, she came home with nothing. And she's like, how did that even happen? She's really sort of terrifying and fascinating. And she ends up getting a hold of a book called History of Demonology, I think is the first one. And it's got a Am I Possessed test. And it's got 10 questions, and it says if the first time she scores, like a 3, and it says, the answer to that is no, you're not possessed, but maybe you should talk to a therapist. She takes it again a little while later, so it's not like in the same day. This is like weeks later. And she gets a 5. And the answer to the 5 is you maybe be in the beginning stages of possession. Maybe you should reach out to a spiritual leader. And the final time she takes it, she scores a 7, which means you are possessed and maybe putting you or your loved ones into danger if you don't seek help. So she's heading home one night and she runs into the German Shepherd, who does not like her anymore, who used to love her. Doesn't matter what treats she has in her pockets for him, he is not interested in her. He growls at her. His tail goes between his legs. His ears go back. He's not. And she tries to put out her hand to him, and he bites her hard, like enough that she needs to go to the emergency room. And she calls Ed, and this is the point where the book gets so specifically dated to 2003 because she tries to get a hold of him, but he's not in the office. So she, leaves a message in the office, and she tries to get a hold of him again, but he's not in the office. She leaves a message at the office, and but she's got to go to the emergency room. So she goes to the emergency room, and he can't figure out where she is. So by the time she gets home, he's livid. He's like, where have you been? Why didn't you call me? And she's like, I called you twice. And he's like, well, I'm out of the office a lot. And then she says, and this is what dates it, maybe you should be getting one of those cellular phones so that I can get a hold of you when you're not in the office. As if to say, like, there are cellular phones in the world, but it's not something everyone has. And it's such a very specific moment in time when some people had them and some people didn't. Just made me laugh. So she says, well, I had to go to the emergency room, and that works to get him back on her side, a little bit of guilt of like, well, I actually needed medical attention. So, and because this was, a dog that lives on the street, she's going to have to do the rabies shots thing, which stinks. But this is where they go on their weekend vacation with this family that are these colleagues. They have a like a little beach house, and they're going to go to the beach. And it's like they silently agree, this couple, Amanda and Ed, silently just agree that they're going to be on their best behavior. They're going to be great. This is just going to be a good time. Everyone's going to relax. It's going to be wonderful. Amanda is swimming in the ocean. She sees a little girl who is playing in the waves, and it's very sweet. But she can tell that the little girl doesn't realize how far she's getting away from the shore. And so she sort of like heads over to the child to be like, you're going to want to come in a little closer. Like you're getting further and further out. And she's considering going over to the girl and seeing if she should help her. And when the little girl surfaces one time and she's coughing, Amanda's like, okay, I got to go over there. I got to help her. Like she's just a little kid. I'm the only grown up around here. She swims over to her and starts saying like, you need to take care of, to get back in, whatever. And as she goes to lift the child out of the water, she feels her hand grab the child's hair and pull her down under the water. And she only lets her up enough to get like a couple little breaths of air and then pulls her back down. Like it's a game. Like only just a little bit of oxygen so that you're not going to die. It's horrifying. This older lady who sees what's going on, or like sees that the child is in distress, doesn't quite see what's going on, but sees that there's something going on, starts to head out to them, and Amanda sees it. So she pulls the child under the water with her. They both come out sputtering, and she's like, help me, this girl, I think she's drowning, she needs our help. So the older woman gets to them, and the two of them help get her out of the water. And she says that when she pulled her under the water and she was holding her and they were both under the water together, it was like she had this vision of what this child's life is like. And it's awful. She lives a life of poverty and abuse. She lives in a railway apartment with way too many siblings. And her mother is only so present. But as soon as she loses hold of the girl, it's gone. But she saw it and she can remember it, but she's not getting any more. And when they're back on the beach and the child's mother is comforting her and she's thanking both Amanda and this older woman, and Ed comes over and just wraps his arms around her and is like trying to comfort her, and she's just like shaken by the whole thing. Like, did I really just try to kill a child? Like, what's going on with me? And she looks up into the sky, and you've been to the beach, right? You can see there's always birds flying through the sky, and there's birds, and they're in their V formation, and they one by one they start to go out of the V formation and create a new formation, and it says Naama. And this is what gets Amanda reading. Now, Naama is, and she calls it Nama, but it's Naama if you want to be technical. And Naama is from a text in the Jewish Kabbalistic tradition. And technically, the only people who are even allowed to have access to these teachings must be male, Orthodox, Jewish, and over the age of 40. So, and it's the Jewish book of mysticism. If you remember when Madonna got really into sort of Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, that was this. And so that's where this story of this demon comes from. Okay, so the story of this demon is, according to this book, because there's lots of versions of the story of Naama, but in Come Closer, the way it's described is that she was Adam's second wife. So for those of you who don't know, the very first wife of Adam was Lilith, not Eve. And when Adam expected her to obey him, she wouldn't. She was having none of it, which is probably why that Women's Power Festival was called the Lilith Fair. So the next wife that God makes for Adam, he allows him to watch the creation of. He also makes this Naama from the pure dust, but Adam gets to watch her be created. So he sees her bones start at her feet, her skeleton until she's got, the skull, and then organs, and then, muscles and fascia and tendons and blood and all the other, mucus and all the other things that make. So Adam witnesses Naama being created from the inside out. And by the time God is done creating Naama, Adam finds her to be too grotesque to love. He thinks she's disgusting and gross. So Naama is sent to the Red Mountains, which is where Lilith is sent. And there she gives birth to a demon. Now, how does she manage to become pregnant with a demon? During the 100 years that Adam was, quote unquote, disgusted with Eve for creating children that would kill each other. This is after Cain kills Abel. For 100 years, Adam is disgusted with Eve and will not lay with her. So when he has what he thinks are nighttime admissions, he's actually laying with Naama. She comes to him in his dreams, and she has been impregnated by him in his dreams. And that is how she births her first son, who's a demon. Now she believes that she is being possessed by this Naama. And she sees her, and she has started to whisper to her. In her dreams, she started whispering to her about how much she loves her and she'll always be with her. And the whispers start to come to her when she's awake. Like it just gets a little more all the time. And from her book, she finds the closest spiritualist. Like there's a research section in the back, like there's a resource section in the back. And she finds the person in the back who's a spiritualist, who should be able to help her, who is the closest to where she is. It's not in the nicest part of town, but she doesn't care. She's going to see this Maria lady. So she walks into this shop that is full of things she could not even begin to define. And there she meets a woman who closes down her store, sits down with Amanda. She puts out cards, like, tarot kind of cards, and then says, "There is a demon with you." Amanda's like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, she's with you now." And she knows that Amanda knows who she is. And she's like, "So you need to take this seriously?" To him, and she says, "Bring me cleanser number 5, or number 5. I think it just says on the bottle, it just says number 5. And she says to her, "Okay, you're going to cleanse yourself with this. You're going to go home and you're going to cleanse yourself with this. And then for 3 days. And then you're going to take 3 days, for 5 days. And then you're going to take 3 days off. And then 3 more days, and then 3 days off, and you're going to continue the 3 days on, 3 days off until the bottle is completely empty. This is not going to get rid of the demon, but it will make it possible for you to fight her, hold her off." And the holy woman tells her, "Whatever you do, do not give in. You cannot give her an inch. You cannot give her anything. You give her a centimeter, she will take 100 miles. When the next time she sort of sees her husband at home, he's just worried about her. So he says, "I was wondering if you would be interested in talking to someone." And she's like, "Oh my God, this is the man I love. Yes, I'm not possessed. I am crazy. I just need a therapist. Maybe I even need to go to a mental institution. That's fine. We'll figure it all out. I'll get better. I'll take what I need to do. I'll do what I need to do. I'm not possessed. I'm just crazy." She's like, feels good about it, which I get. So the next morning she calls her doctor, which is actually the same doctor that her husband goes to, for a recommendation. And she says, "Dr. Fenton is who you should see. He's the best. And, but it's really hard to get in to see him. So please be sure and let him know that I am sending you." Right? So she calls this doctor, and the receptionist says, "We can get you in here in about a month." And then she remembers, "Oh, wait, my doctor told me to say that she sent me." And they're like, "Oh, well, that's completely different. Do you want to come in today?" So she's like, "Yes, I do. Bring me in today." She's on her way, and there's a little baby in a stroller that she walks past, and she smiles at it. And the baby doesn't smile back. And she starts to realize that no living thing with kindness smiles at her anymore. Cats hiss, dogs growl, squirrels and rabbits run away, babies cry, little children look away. No one smiles at her, no matter how big she smiles at them. There is nothing with kindness that shows her any kindness, and it's been a while now. So she's in the doctor's office, and she's continuing to think how nice it will be to be mentally ill and not, possessed. And when the doctor comes in, he says, "Why are you here?" And she says, "There's these..." She tells him everything that's going on. She leaves out that she may have killed someone. She leaves out the fact that the dog bit her. And she leaves out the little girl, the drowning little girl. But she tells him everything else. And he says, "Well, what's so bad about these changes?" And she says, "Well, it's not me." And he says, "Well, it sounds to me, you're in your mid-30s. You're just coming into your own. You're not someone else. You're becoming yourself. And she needs to be open to change. And why isn't she open to change?" And the voice inside her, the one that's been whispering to her, says, "There's nothing wrong with you. You're just getting better. We're just getting better." Now she starts to feel like this is weird, right? She says, "I burnt my husband." And his response is, "That was an accident." Which is at this point that she realized that she has never told this doctor her age. She never told this doctor that she burnt her husband. And she calls him on it, and he says, "Oh, I got your background information from the doctor." I read your chart. She's like, I never told the doctor about the burn. He's like, of course you did. You're upset about a lot of things. You're just not remembering. She says, let me see the record that you have. Let me see it. I want to see what's written in there. And he says, no, this is private. And she's like, private, but it's about me. He refuses to relent. He actually grabs her hand and holds her tight until she finally is like, fine, I'm going to leave. She leaves. She's second guessing herself. She's trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Why didn't she like that doctor? Why was that doctor so weird? Now she needs another recommendation for a therapist. What's she going to do? She's just sort of wandering until she finds herself in a small forest. There's no forest here. She's like, where am I? What is happening? In fact, she realizes she's so deep in the forest, she doesn't even know how to get out, which is when she starts to hear female laughing coming from all directions. She starts running to get away from it. And she runs 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 until she is completely out of breath. She has no energy left in her. She cannot run anymore. And she looks around and she feels like she literally hasn't moved, even though she is completely out of breath and energy because she's been running for so long. And that's when a hand lands on her head, starts to caress her face and run through her hair until it pushes her down to her knees, shoves her onto her stomach, whispers Amanda's name into her ear, and says, Edward doesn't need to know anything about me or you or us. Amanda has no idea how she gets out of the forest, that little forest. No idea. When she's back home, she checks on her demon book into the resources, and she finds the second closest spiritualist. And this is a guy named Ray Thomas, and he's director and CEO of the Ray of Hope Fellowship, which is like located in this strip mall. And she goes to see him, and he says, let me guess. You're possessed. You think you're possessed by a demon. It's like, I can't believe that we ever put that quiz into that book. I was not smart. So let's go through the quiz. Let's see what the answers to your questions, if what questions you're answering yes to. So here are the 10 questions for her Are You Possessed by a Demon quiz. The first is, I hear strange noises in my home that family members say only happen when I'm present. Her response to this is, I used to. 2, I do things out of character that I do not want to do and I do not understand. Yes. 3, I am short and ill-tempered with loved ones. Yes. 4, I understand languages and have knowledge that I have not studied. Yes. 5, I have blackouts not caused by drugs or alcohol. Yes. 6, I have unusual new thoughts or voices in my head. Yes. 7, I have dreams of personalities that may be demons. Yes. 8, a psychiatrist, spiritualist, or priest has told me that I'm possessed. Yes. 9, I have urges to hurt or kill animals or other people. Yes. 10, I have hurt or killed animals or people. Yes. Ray's no longer smiling. The guy who's like, you bet you think you're... Yeah. Instead, he's like, what did you say your name was? How do you feel about a dispossession? She looks at him and he's like, we don't use the E word here. It's too scary. And she says, well, does it work? And he says 93% success rate. And she says another 7%. And he says, don't worry about that now. She signs a release agreeing that this whole experience is simply for entertainment purposes. And he has her visualize a clean, empty space. And he tells her that she is in complete control of her own space. That's about when she starts to see Naama crouched in her clean white space that now has some shadows. And she scurries away. And she can't quite find her, but she knows she's in some of the dark corners of this room, that she's this light, bright, wonderful room she's supposed to be in. He tells her to visualize herself connected to this entity, and this thick black rope appears at her belly and it yanks on her hard. And Ray tells her, don't, You're in complete control. In fact, you have the world's strongest scissors in your hands. These scissors can cut through anything. But when she looks down at her hand, what she sees is a rusty old steak knife. He walks her through cutting the cord. But she can't. Even though he's saying things like, the cord is cut, and you've made it all the way through, and doesn't it feel good? She is cutting and nothing, and now the knife is disintegrating in her hand, and the cord has somehow gotten stronger. So Ray is continuing on, walking her through an experience that she's not having anymore. Okay? He says the cord is cut, you're now free. Naama leaps out of the corner of the room, comes for Amanda. He says, be in your clean space, enjoy your freedom, but instead, there is blood everywhere. It is totally, fully encompassing her, and he just continues in just the complete wrong direction. Naama knocks Amanda over, straddles Amanda, and says, do you forgive me? When Ray brings her out of the visualization, he asks how she's feeling. How did we do? She answers in a voice that isn't hers. I feel so much better. That was so enlightening. And then the demon writes a check for $200, and they walk out of the office. And from this point on, Amanda has very little control. In fact, they stop at a bar by the airport, and they make back the $200 by sleeping with a stranger in the bathroom. She goes into a bookstore and she finds a book called Demon Possession in You, only to have the book fall out of her hand and Naama be right next to her and whisper, why do you make it so hard? Just let me in. She starts whispering about how uninteresting Edward is and how he's not interested in their marriage anymore at all. And all of a sudden, she's getting all of these credit cards in the mail, things that she was never approved for before. She should not be getting these credit cards, but they're all coming in. And Naama is spending all of the money on them, and she's buying new clothes and perfumes and a new rug and new shoes and new purses, and the credit cards are maxed out, so she gets more. Edward has the couple that had them at the beach over for dinner, and she is trying to say what she wants to say, and it's just Naama that's coming out of her mouth. She starts to see the people around her turn into demons. She looks over at Sophia, who is the wife of this couple, and her eyes bulge and her mouth opens too wide, and she shakes her head and looks back, and she's fine. And this starts happening all over the place. She's seeing all of these visions of people who are actually demons. And she's really scared. So she literally runs herself to that first spiritual healer, the one that gave her the cleanser, which, by the way, she used once. Maria sees her. She runs. She grabs her. And she's like, no, you can't come in here. She is with you. She is stronger than ever. And she screams to her assistant, get me number 17. She hands her the number 17. She says, same instructions as before. Use it this time. And get a hold of a book called Possession by K.S. Walker. Now get out of here. She tries to use the cleanser. And of course, Naama drops the bottle and it breaks. And she just laughs and laughs. She falls to the ground laughing at Amanda. Naama says to her, you really thought that was going to work? She tries to find the book. She orders it. She orders 4 copies from the internet. And when they get there, somehow she doesn't know about it and that they're even there until she sees in her fireplace that all 4 books are on fire. Beyond recognition fire, not I can still grab some out. She'll be in a bookstore and she'll literally have the book in her hand and then she'll black out. And no, Naama's not letting her have this book. And then she misses Ed's birthday, and he's not speaking to her the next day. She's got no memory of his birthday. She doesn't know why he's not speaking to her the next day. But Naama lets her experience the not speaking to part. The melding of their thoughts continues. She can't have a whole thought of her own. She starts to have her own thought, and Naama finishes it, or Naama grabs her thought before she even started and then turns it into a different direction. She's screaming for help, and Naama just keeps telling her, but I love you. I would never leave you. I love you. I'm here for you. And so Amanda starts asking why. She's finally resolved herself to the fact that she's not getting away from this demon, that she can't get away, she can't yell for help, she can't get help. So at least tell her why. Why me? And at first, Naama just does a lot of like giggling and laughing and, oh, you silly thing. And finally she says, well, you invited me. It's like, I did not invite you. And she says, well, you remember that time that we burnt Ed? There was a moment. You really enjoyed it. And Amanda says, no, the reason that I enjoyed it is because of you. You were the one. And Naama says, no. I'm not able to do anything that you don't want to do. She can't have any fun without Amanda. Amanda has given her permission to use her and do as she wants because she has gotten into the deepest, darkest part of Amanda and knows what her deepest, darkest desires and wants are. And she's willing to make those things happen. That's what the demon does. She stops going to work. She gets fired, picks up some strange man who gives her a really hard time. And then Amanda wakes up next to her dead body, his dead body, only to never get into any sort of trouble. And then she goes to a bar, and the guy that she's hitting on is calling her Naama. And he says, what is that? Is that like Arabic? What is that? And she goes, it's satanic. I'm like, oh my God, there's no, I don't think this is going to have a happy ending. Is what I was thinking at this point. Ed says that he's done with her. He's done with their marriage. He says, I've clearly been having an affair. What's so sad is that inside Amanda, she's thinking of all of the beautiful, wonderful times that her and Edward have had and how much she loves him and how much she was like, but I'm here and I need your help and I'm just down here and I'm just below the surface and you're just not hearing me. And Naama is just in control. And she starts laughing, uncontrollably laughing, rolling around on the bed laughing. And Ed's like, focus. I'm leaving you. This is too much. I'm out of here. Goodbye. I'm leaving. Amanda says that she's really just left at this point with moments, blinks almost, like, oh, this gorgeous, lavish, amazing room with a woman tied up, pleading to be let go. And then next thing she knows, she's in a lingerie shop, and Naama is cutting up the beautiful bras, while a woman is in one of the changing rooms crying to get out. Our Amanda wakes up and she's throwing up on the sidewalk, and a police officer offers to drive her home, and he's like, my wife has the stomach flu too, oh really, it sucks. As he's talking, she realizes she's really back on the red beach. And the reason it's red is because the water is blood, and Naama is swimming through it with glee, and Amanda is still trying to run, and Naama just keeps saying, you have to stop. Stop trying. I'm never going to let you go. I love you. I'm here with you. Near the end of the story, Ed returns to the apartment in a wrinkled suit, and she hugs him and he shakes her off. And he looks everywhere but at her. He says, I tried to call. I tried to send letters. He didn't understand why she just wouldn't respond. He begins to cry. She just keeps thinking, love me. I love you. I'm in here and I need your help. To which he says, I'm filing a divorce. He wants to get married again. It's been over a year. He's done. All the happy memories are running through Amanda's head. She thinks about their plans, where they were going to go, what they were going to do, and how for her, the feelings are still the same for Ed. Like, she still feels the same way. It's Naama that is the problem. But there's nothing she can do. She lays back on the crimson beach and watches as Naama writes in the sand, I win. And this is when the story is no longer being told through the point of view of Amanda. Instead, it's being told through the point of view of Naama. Everybody wants me. Amanda wanted me, or else I never could have gotten in. Only Ed. Ed is the only one who hasn't wanted me. Amanda gets control again for the first time after a very long time. And when she first starts to look around, she's like, this is a very strange looking party. There's a lot of people here, but no one seems to be having fun, and it's very serious. And what's going on? Then a man takes her picture and then takes another picture. And then a man sits down on the couch next to her and he's yelling at her. He's like, what did you do? And why did you do it? And she looks down and she sees that she's covered in blood, but she doesn't seem to be bleeding. And she tries to scream for Ed, and everyone stops and looks at her like, how can you possibly be screaming for the man that you killed? Which is when she sees his dead body, and above it, in blood, it says, I win. And Amanda tells us that Naama pled guilty and agreed to be involuntarily committed to a mental institution for the foreseeable future, for hopefully the rest of her life, as the articles that were written about her say. And what do we find out that first she stabbed a girl with a shank. Then in solitary, she grew out her nails so that when the guard came to let her out, she was able to kill him. Then Naama is having so much fun in the hospital, and that Amanda really rarely gets any time. But when she does, she tries to think about Ed and how wonderful he was and how much she loved him. But somehow the memories of him always come back to the visions of the blood and his body. Which is always when Naama takes over her thoughts. Naama thinks they always resist, but in the end they always want her. Amanda is really no longer herself. Naama is really completely in control. There's just moments so that Amanda can be sort of tortured. They spend their nights in the Crimson Sea, where she holds Amanda and she promises to never let her alone. And Amanda thinks to herself, that is all I ever wanted. That was the truest wish of my heart, to be with someone who never, ever leaves me alone. And the story ends. So she did invite her in, because her deepest, darkest dream was to never be left alone. And so Naama said, I can do that for you. And that's what she did. The story is so creepy because it's from the point of view of the person who she really didn't change on the inside. You know, like from the outside, it seems like the person is changing completely. They're totally different. But this story shows you that that real person is still in there and still themselves. And it's not that they've changed. It's that the outwardness of them has changed and someone has taken over, and that true person inside is still there, which is like the scariest thing. Yeah, it was a very cool, creepy story. I enjoyed it immensely. The fact that it was from the point of view of the person who was taken over, I just thought was super cool. So anyway, that is the entire story of Come Closer by Sara Gran, which is an amazing, amazing novel. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm really appreciate you sticking around and hanging out. And if you could just do me a favor and be nice to each other out there and be nice to yourself, that would be super great. I'll catch you next time. Bye.